Hello tonight. You are about to wander across the quiet landscapes where the first movements of human history begin, long before crowns, walls, and great empires rise from the earth. Beneath the endless sky, you discover how open lands, gentle winds, and ancient rivers slowly shape the paths that people follow through time. Imagine yourself standing on a vast plain where the horizon stretches softly in every direction, and the ground beneath your feet carries memories older than any written record. The grass moves slowly with the breeze, almost like waves resting on a green ocean. Even the clouds above seem to travel without urgency, as if they have nowhere else they need to be. Around you, the ancient world feels calm and spacious, filled with quiet sounds of nature rather than the noise of crowded cities. A small stream passes through the land, carrying water toward distant valleys. Somewhere nearby, early communities prepare their daily lives, while a curious little bird observes them as if it is also trying to understand human habits. So, before you get completely comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe to the channel, but only if you truly enjoy what we're creating here. And while you settle in, tell us in the comments where you are listening from and what time it is in your part of the world. It is always fascinating to imagine these ancient landscapes being explored by people resting in different places across the planet. Now, slowly dim the lights, perhaps turn on a fan, letting the steady hum of the air fill the room, and in that gentle rhythm, we quietly step into tonight's journey together. You begin your journey across the ancient open lands of Eurasia, a region that once looked very different from the world you recognize today. Before organized kingdoms and imperial borders appeared, these spaces were shaped mostly by mountains, rivers, changing seasons, and the movements of animals. The land itself was the first storyteller, quietly recording every transformation. Geologists studying the ancient environment of the Eurasian steppe reveal a landscape that changed slowly over thousands of years. Climate patterns shifted, grasslands expanded and contracted, and rivers followed their own natural paths. These changes happened gradually, almost like the slow turning of pages in a very old book that no one had written. The grasslands of the steppe became one of the great open spaces of human history. Stretching from Eastern Europe toward Central Asia, these lands created a unique environment where people learned to travel, observe, and adapt. The open horizon was not empty. It was filled with possibilities, resources, and quiet challenges. You can imagine small groups moving across these plains, following animals, searching for water, and finding shelter wherever nature allowed. Their lives were connected to the rhythms of the seasons. They watched the sky, noticed changes in temperature, and understood the land through careful attention rather than maps or written instructions. Archaeologists have discovered ancient stone tools, animal remains, and traces of early settlements that reveal how humans lived in these environments. These objects are simple compared to later monuments, but they carry important stories. A small stone tool can quietly explain the intelligence and patience of someone who lived thousands of years ago. Some of the oldest evidence of human activity in Eurasia shows that early communities were not simply wandering without direction. They created patterns, returned to familiar locations, and developed knowledge that passed from one generation to another. Their survival depended on memory, cooperation, and a deep understanding of nature. The ancient people of the open lands moved through a world where the boundaries between humans and the environment were very thin. Rivers provided water, animals provided food, and the changing seasons guided their decisions. Life was not rushed because nature itself operated on a slower and steadier rhythm. When you look at these ancient landscapes in your imagination, you can almost hear the quiet footsteps of travelers crossing the plains. There are no highways, no modern lights, and no distant city sounds. Only wind, footsteps, and the occasional call of animals moving through the wide spaces. The domestication of animals later transformed these lands in remarkable ways. Archaeological evidence suggests that early communities gradually learned to live alongside animals such as horses and sheep. This relationship allowed people to travel farther and explore wider territories, creating connections between distant regions. The horse, in particular, became an important companion across the Eurasian steppe. Ancient discoveries suggest that early horse management developed thousands of years ago in areas of Central Asia. Over time, this relationship changed how people moved, traded, and communicated across enormous distances. The open lands also encouraged a special kind of social organization. Small groups needed cooperation because the environment required shared knowledge and teamwork. Decisions about movement, resources, and survival were often connected to collective understanding rather than individual action. Long before formal empires appeared, these communities were already building invisible networks across the landscape. Stories, traditions, and practical knowledge traveled with people from one place to another. The movement of ideas was as important as the movement of bodies. The Quiet Plains also witnessed the early foundations of trade. Different regions offered different materials, and people exchanged stones, metals, decorations, and useful objects. These exchanges were not yet the great commercial systems of later history, but they were the first gentle threads connecting distant worlds. As centuries passed, these open spaces became places where different ways of life met. Farmers from river valleys encountered herders from grasslands, and each group carried knowledge that the other could learn from. History often grows from these quiet meetings rather than from dramatic moments alone. The ancient world reminds you that power does not always begin with walls and palaces. Sometimes it begins with a landscape that teaches people how to move, cooperate, and understand their surroundings. The wide horizon becomes a silent teacher, shaping the habits and ambitions of generations. The first currents of future empires begin here, not as sudden storms, but as slow movements beneath the surface. Geography creates opportunities, and people respond to those opportunities with creativity and patience. The open lands become the stage where new forms of organization slowly emerge. As the evening sky settles over these ancient plains, you can imagine the earliest travelers resting beneath the stars, their gentle fires glowing while their animals remain quietly nearby. The vast land continues its timeless rhythm, and the same wind carries forgotten stories across generations. From this peaceful beginning of stone, grass, and sky, human civilization slowly unfolds, with the open lands preserving the memories of countless footsteps and dreams. Long before stone cities rise above the horizon, and before great palaces appear across the ancient world, you find yourself walking through landscapes shaped by rivers, seasons, and human patience. Civilization does not arrive suddenly, but grows slowly like roots beneath the earth. Archaeological evidence from early settlements shows that people gradually created stability through cooperation and adaptation. You look across ancient valleys where small communities learn the rhythm of nature around them. People gather near rivers, fertile lands, and animal paths that provide food and resources. Discoveries from Mesopotamia reveal early farming villages where humans studied rainfall, soil, and water cycles to create reliable ways of living. The first settlements are simple places built for warmth and connection rather than grandeur. Excavations in regions such as Central Asia and the Fertile Crescent reveal ancient houses, storage areas, stone tools, and pottery fragments. These findings show how early communities slowly transformed natural spaces into organized environments. You can imagine families preparing food beside a small fire, while children watch animals moving across the landscape. Their daily routines feel familiar, almost like someone today tending a garden and preparing for another quiet morning. Ancient people also valued comfort, cooperation, and the repeated patterns of everyday life. Across Eurasia, different communities discover unique ways to live while remaining closely connected to nature. Some groups settle near rivers where they grow crops and build stable villages, while others follow herds across wide grasslands. Archaeological evidence of domesticated animals, stone tools, and ancient shelters shows how humans gradually adapted to changing climates and environments through patience, observation, and cooperation. As you continue through these ancient landscapes, you notice that every village, camp, and pathway preserves a small piece of humanity's memory. The remains of early homes, tools, and travel routes become quiet foundations for future civilizations. From these peaceful beginnings, larger societies slowly emerge, shaped by experience, connection, and the endless movement of time. The ancient people of these lands learn that water is more than a simple resource. It becomes the center of life itself. Rivers, springs, and seasonal streams create gathering places where communities meet, exchange ideas, and build relationships. These connections slowly extend beyond individual villages, forming the earliest foundations of cooperation between different groups. In Mesopotamia, early farmers transform dry landscapes into productive fields through careful irrigation methods. They create channels that guide water toward crops, allowing settlements to expand gradually. These systems require teamwork, patience, and careful observation, showing that organized societies begin forming long before the appearance of formal kingdoms. The ancient villages of this period reveal a quiet truth about human nature. People are not only trying to survive from one day to the next, but they are also creating traditions, routines, and shared responsibilities. These connections help future generations continue their way of life. Civilization begins as a gentle partnership between communities, knowledge, and the natural world. Archaeologists studying ancient settlements discover pottery fragments, woven materials, and farming tools that silently preserve human stories. A broken clay bowl may seem ordinary, yet it reveals how people stored food, prepared meals, and organized daily life. These simple objects show the connection between ancient communities, seasonal changes, and the natural cycles surrounding them. Many discoveries come from locations where early communities lived thousands of years ago. The remains of simple homes and temporary camps show that humans constantly adapted to their surroundings. They moved when necessary, remained when conditions were favorable, and carried their accumulated knowledge into new places. The steppe regions of Central Asia become important meeting areas between different ways of life. Herding communities travel across open grasslands, while farming societies settle near fertile lands. These groups remain connected because trade, communication, and shared needs slowly create relationships between them. Small exchanges become the beginning of much larger networks across the ancient world. A piece of stone from one region may travel far away, while decorative objects and useful materials move in another direction. These connections resemble quiet threads woven across the landscape, creating a fabric of human interaction. The development of animal domestication slowly changes the relationship between people and distance. Animals such as sheep, goats, and later horses allow communities to travel farther and manage resources more effectively. The landscape is no longer viewed as a barrier, but as a space filled with opportunities. People begin to understand the rhythm of movement, seasons, and survival across the open lands. The horse becomes one of the most important companions in the long story of human adaptation. Evidence from ancient steppe cultures suggests that early horse management existed thousands of years ago. At first, the relationship remained simple and practical, but over time, horses transformed transportation, communication, trade, and the spread of ideas between distant communities across the vast landscapes. As communities become more connected through movement and exchange, their social structures gradually become more organized and stable. Leaders, skilled workers, and specialized roles slowly appear within settlements. These changes do not arrive suddenly, but develop over generations, like a peaceful river shaping the land through countless gentle movements. Patience, cooperation, and the quiet growth of human experience. The earliest trade routes emerge through repeated journeys across mountains, valleys, and wide grasslands. Travelers slowly create familiar paths by observing landscapes, seasons, and natural signs. These simple trails gradually become foundations for larger networks that connect distant civilizations. Through these routes, people exchange goods, knowledge, beliefs, and traditions, allowing different cultures to meet across enormous distances. Life in these early societies continues with a peaceful and familiar rhythm shaped by nature. People plant crops, gather resources, build shelters, repair tools, and share stories beside quiet fires. Their lives contain challenges, yet they also include cooperation, creativity, and small achievements. These daily experiences slowly become the foundation of communities that continue through generations. 1. Fascinating detail from ancient life is that many early communities created carefully designed pottery decorated with meaningful patterns. These simple objects often reveal a desire for beauty and expression. Even ordinary household items carried cultural identity, showing that creativity existed alongside survival in ancient human societies. The foundations of civilization are created from more than stone, metal, or impressive structures. They are formed through habits, memories, relationships, and shared traditions. Every quiet action, from planting seeds and making tools to caring for others, becomes part of a larger human story. These simple moments connect generations together and carry the wisdom of the past into the future. As you slowly continue through this ancient landscape, you begin to notice how these quiet foundations prepare the world for greater transformations. Villages, camps, and early trade paths become the first gentle movements toward organized societies that will eventually rise beside the great rivers of history. You now move from the wide open lands into a world where rivers become the quiet guides of human civilization. The flowing water does not rush, but it creates a steady rhythm that shapes villages, farms, and cities. Along these ancient rivers, people begin to build organized societies that grow from patience, observation, and a deep understanding of nature. The great rivers of the ancient world become companions to human life. The Nile in Egypt, the Tigris and Euphrates in Mesopotamia, and other waterways across Asia provide water, fertile soil, and pathways for movement. Their gentle currents carry not only materials, but also ideas, traditions, and the first forms of administration. Far away in Mesopotamia, another ancient story unfolds between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers. Unlike the predictable Nile, these rivers often change their patterns and require careful management. Communities respond by creating canals, channels, and irrigation systems that guide water toward fields. Through patience and cooperation, people transform challenging landscapes into productive areas where villages and cities can gradually grow. The cities of Mesopotamia become remarkable centers of organization and innovation. Places such as Uruk expand into large urban communities where thousands of people live, work, and exchange resources. These cities require careful planning, storage systems, skilled workers, and methods for recording information. Their growth shows how human cooperation slowly creates more complex forms of society. One of the most fascinating discoveries from this era is the development of cuneiform writing. Ancient scribes pressed symbols into clay tablets using simple tools, creating records that survive for thousands of years. These tablets reveal details about trade, agriculture, taxes, and daily activities, showing that ancient civilizations carefully documented many ordinary parts of life. You can imagine a quiet room where a scribe carefully writes on soft clay while warm sunlight enters through a small opening. The process seems slow and peaceful, yet every mark preserves a valuable piece of history. It feels like an ancient method of organizing information, with the earth itself becoming a lasting storage place. The growth of cities requires new forms of cooperation between thousands of people. Communities need ways to distribute food, manage resources, organize labor, and maintain public spaces. Administrative systems slowly develop through experience and necessity. These structures allow large populations to function together while creating stability beyond the limits of small villages. Far away in Mesopotamia, another ancient story unfolds between the Tigris and Euphrates rivers. Unlike the steady Nile, these rivers can be unpredictable, sometimes changing their patterns and creating new challenges. Communities respond by building canals and water systems, carefully guiding the flow and creating a stable environment where agriculture and settlements can gradually develop. The cities of Mesopotamia become important centers of organization and innovation. Places such as Uruk grow into large urban communities where thousands of people live, work, and exchange goods. These cities require careful planning, storage areas, building methods, and systems for recording information to maintain daily activities. One fascinating discovery from this era is the development of cuneiform writing. Ancient people pressed small marks into clay tablets using simple tools, creating records that survive for thousands of years. These tablets reveal details about trade, farming, taxes, and ordinary activities, offering a quiet window into ancient daily life. You can imagine a peaceful room where a scribe carefully shapes symbols onto soft clay while sunlight enters through a small opening. The work feels slow and patient, yet every mark preserves a piece of history. It resembles an ancient way of organizing information, with the earth itself becoming a lasting archive. The growth of cities requires new forms of cooperation among expanding communities. People need ways to distribute food, manage resources, and maintain shared spaces. Administrative systems slowly develop, creating structures that allow large populations to function together without depending only on personal relationships or small village connections. Ancient records show that officials carefully tracked grain supplies, labor activities, and exchanges between communities. These documents reveal that early civilizations were not created only by rulers or powerful figures. They depended on countless farmers, workers, builders, and organizers who quietly maintained daily routines and supported the stability of growing societies. The rise of river civilizations also brings remarkable achievements in architecture and construction. Ancient Egyptians create monumental structures, including the pyramids that continue to inspire curiosity today. These projects require careful planning, engineering knowledge, and cooperation among thousands of people working together across many years. In Mesopotamia, cities develop impressive temples and large public buildings known as ziggurats. These structures rise above the surrounding landscape, becoming visible centers for religious and social activities. They represent the connection between human creativity, spiritual beliefs, and the natural environment that supports their communities. Yet beneath these impressive monuments, ordinary life continues with a familiar and gentle rhythm. Families prepare meals, artisans shape tools, merchants exchange goods, and children learn from older generations. Civilization is not only found in grand structures, but also in the simple moments of everyday human experience. Trade gradually connects river societies with distant regions beyond their own lands. Materials such as metals, stones, and timber travel across great distances because different areas possess different resources. These exchanges create early relationships between communities that may never meet directly, but remain connected through shared needs. The movement of goods allows ideas to travel between ancient civilizations. Farming methods, writing systems, building techniques, and artistic traditions spread across regions. Rivers become peaceful pathways of communication, carrying knowledge like flowing water. Clay tablets from Mesopotamia also record ordinary activities, showing that ancient people managed trade, payments, and daily responsibilities much like communities today. As these civilizations grow beside the rivers, they begin connecting with wider regions beyond their familiar valleys. Travelers, merchants, and migrating groups bring new ideas and influences. The organized world near the water slowly reaches toward distant lands, where different cultures gradually meet and create new connections. The river civilizations teach a gentle lesson about the nature of history. Great societies do not emerge only from conquest, power, or ambition. They often begin through quiet cooperation with nature, where water, fertile soil, and human effort combine to create lasting communities. The flowing rivers continue their endless journeys, just as generations of people continue theirs through time. Cities beside the water rise, expand, and transform, while the rivers remain steady witnesses. Their currents quietly carry memories of farmers, builders, traders, and dreamers who shaped the foundations of ancient civilizations. As you follow the path of these rivers toward distant horizons, you begin to understand how organized societies will eventually meet the wide spaces beyond them. The next chapter of history emerges from the connection between settled lands and open landscapes, where new relationships slowly begin to form. You now leave the calm rivers behind and return to the endless horizons where the steppe stretches beneath the open sky. Here, movement becomes a natural rhythm of life and the landscape quietly shapes how communities grow and adapt. The wide grasslands influence travel, communication, and survival, creating a world where people learn from nature and follow its changing patterns. The ancient grasslands of Eurasia create a world where distance feels different from settled lands. There are no permanent roads like those of later civilizations, yet people follow natural paths shaped by rivers, valleys, and animal movements. The horizon becomes a silent guide, leading travelers toward new places and distant communities across the open landscape. As you imagine walking across these peaceful plains, you notice the wind moving gently through the tall grass. The landscape seems simple at first, but it contains countless layers of memory and history. It feels like a natural library where the pages are made of soil, stones, ancient tools, and the footprints of forgotten travelers. The steppe is not an empty space waiting for civilization to appear. It is a living environment filled with knowledge, traditions, and communities that understand the land deeply. The people who travel through these regions develop skills in animal care, navigation, and survival, allowing them to connect distant areas through movement. Among these communities are the Scythians, ancient nomadic peoples who live across parts of the Eurasian steppe. Historical records from neighboring civilizations describe them as skilled horse riders and archers. Their ability to move quickly across open landscapes gives them influence, allowing them to interact with larger, settled societies. The Scythians are remembered not only for their military abilities but also for trade and cultural exchange. Archaeological discoveries reveal impressive metalwork, jewelry, and decorated objects created by steppe artisans. Their famous animal-style art shows detailed images of animals, reflecting their connection with nature and their remarkable artistic traditions. You can picture a Scythian craftsman carefully shaping a small piece of gold beside a simple camp. The work requires patience, focus, and creativity, much like someone today repairing a treasured object instead of replacing it. Ancient craftsmanship often grows from quiet moments where skill and imagination meet. Across Central Asia, many nomadic communities develop strong relationships with movement and seasonal change. They follow natural cycles, moving herds between pastures while observing weather, water, and landscapes. Their way of life depends on memory, experience, and cooperation. Archaeological evidence from ancient steppe cultures shows how these communities adapted to open environments through flexible traditions and close connections with nature. The ability to travel across enormous distances changes the balance of power in the ancient world. Groups that move efficiently can communicate faster, exchange resources, and respond to changing conditions. Their mobility allows them to influence wider regions. Geography becomes an important force shaping political relationships, trade networks, and the gradual rise of new forms of authority. The open steppe creates connections between settled civilizations and mobile societies. Farmers living near rivers produce crops, tools, and goods, while pastoral communities provide animals, materials, and access to distant lands. Neither world develops completely alone because each depends on exchange. Their relationship becomes a quiet interaction between stability, movement, and shared survival. Trade routes begin forming through repeated journeys across mountains, deserts, and grasslands. Long before the famous Silk Road appears, smaller networks already connect communities from east to west. Travelers carry textiles, metals, stones, and useful knowledge across great distances. These early paths become invisible bridges, linking people who may never meet directly. The later Silk Road becomes one of the greatest examples of ancient connection between distant civilizations. It is not a single road, but a vast network of paths crossing mountains, deserts, and grasslands. Merchants carry silk, metals, spices, and precious materials, while travelers share languages, customs, and knowledge between China, Central Asia, the Middle East, and Europe. Along these routes, merchants, scholars, and explorers move through many different cultures and create lasting exchanges. New technologies, artistic styles, and scientific ideas travel across continents over many generations. The Silk Road becomes more than a trade system. It becomes a bridge connecting human experiences, traditions, and the quiet flow of history. These journeys are often slow, careful, and deeply connected to the environment. A caravan crossing a desert or open steppe must consider weather, water sources, and safe resting places. The journey itself becomes part of the exchange because every traveler carries more than goods. They also bring stories, customs, beliefs, and memories from distant lands. One fascinating detail is that the Silk Road spreads knowledge far beyond commerce and material exchange. Technologies, artistic styles, religious ideas, medical practices, and scientific discoveries travel along these routes. A simple invention, story, or observation from one distant region can influence people thousands of miles away, proving that the movement of ideas is as important as the movement of valuable goods. The exchange between cultures creates a world where identities become layered and complex over many generations. Cities along trade routes often contain different languages, traditions, and customs living together peacefully. These places become meeting points where cultures slowly interact, adapt, and blend. creating new forms of society while preserving memories from ancient civilizations. History shows that power often shifts because of environmental conditions rather than only human decisions. Changes in climate, access to resources, and control of important routes can influence which groups become more influential. The landscape quietly shapes choices, encouraging societies to adapt and reorganize according to their surroundings. The vast spaces of the steppe encourage flexibility and awareness. People who depend on movement learn to adjust quickly to changes in weather, resources, and relationships. Their societies develop different strengths from river civilizations, creating systems based on mobility, cooperation, and communication across wide territories. You begin to see that the ancient world is connected by many invisible threads. Rivers carry settled civilizations outward, while open lands bring distant communities together. Farmers, merchants, herders, and travelers all contribute to one larger human story. Their paths cross slowly, forming connections that continue through generations. The horizon continues expanding as you follow these ancient routes across the open lands. The same winds moving through the grasslands carry languages, traditions, and memories between generations. Every journey leaves behind another quiet mark on history, making distant communities feel closer and revealing how human connections continue growing through movement and time. The movement of people across open spaces prepares the way for greater transformations in history. Mobility, organization, and cultural exchange combine to create new forms of power. Tribal connections become wider networks, and wide territories become foundations for some of the greatest empires the ancient world will ever witness. You now move deeper into the vast landscapes where movement itself becomes a source of strength. Across the open steppe, communities learn that cooperation, organization, and knowledge of the land create powerful networks. Nomadic empires rise through alliances, mobility, and adaptation, proving that influence can grow from connections rather than walls, cities, or permanent structures. Their strength flows across the endless horizons. As you imagine standing on a wide plain beneath a calm evening sky, you see groups preparing for another journey. Horses move slowly, families organize their belongings, and leaders discuss routes ahead. The scene feels surprisingly peaceful, almost like a modern road trip where everyone simply needs to remember where the snacks are. Packed, nomadic societies are often misunderstood because their cities and monuments are less visible than those of settled civilizations. Yet their achievements are remarkable. They create systems of leadership, diplomacy, trade, and communication that allow them to manage territories larger than many traditional kingdoms. One of the most significant examples of nomadic power is the rise of the Mongol Empire. Under Genghis Khan during the early 13th century, before becoming a vast empire, it begins as a group of competing tribes living across the Mongolian steppe. Through alliances, discipline, and political reforms, these tribes gradually unite and create a powerful organization that changes the history of Eurasia. Genghis Khan, originally named Temujin, unites several Mongolian tribes and is declared the supreme ruler at the Kurultai Assembly in 1206. His leadership introduces new systems based on loyalty, skill, and responsibility rather than only family connections. This approach helps create cooperation among different groups and strengthens the foundation of the growing Mongol state. The Mongol Empire expands across much of Eurasia, becoming one of the largest connected land empires in history. Historical sources record its expansion from Mongolia toward China, Central Asia, Persia, and Eastern Europe. This movement changes trade routes, communication networks, and relationships between distant civilizations that were previously separated by enormous landscapes. The influence of the Mongols continues beyond their political control and territorial expansion. Their rule supports greater movement across Eurasia, allowing merchants, scholars, and travelers to exchange knowledge more frequently. The Yam messenger system improves communication, while trade routes carry goods, technologies, and ideas between cultures, creating lasting connections throughout the ancient world. The strength of the Mongols comes partly from their deep understanding of distance and movement across vast territories. They rely on skilled horse riders and organized messenger systems to communicate efficiently throughout the empire. Their ability to move information quickly allows leaders to manage distant regions, showing how mobility becomes an important source of power in the ancient and medieval world. These relay stations, known as the Yam system, provide resting places, fresh horses, and support for imperial messengers. The network helps officials maintain communication across thousands of miles. In many ways, it works like an early communication system connecting a huge territory, although the ancient version depends on endurance-trained animals and the steady rhythm of travel. The Mongols also influence trade by creating conditions that allow merchants to move safely across their territories. The Pax Mongolica, a period of relative stability under Mongol rule, encourages travel along important trade routes. During this time, goods, knowledge, technologies, and cultural ideas continue flowing between distant regions that were once difficult to reach. You can imagine a caravan slowly crossing the open landscape, carrying silk, spices, metal objects, and carefully written books. Travelers from different cultures meet along the way, exchanging stories and learning about unfamiliar places. The road becomes more than a path for commerce because it becomes a peaceful meeting place where human experiences are shared. The empire's organization includes administrative practices that help manage diverse populations across enormous lands. Different regions preserve many local traditions while becoming connected through larger imperial structures. This balance between local identity and wider cooperation appears repeatedly throughout history, showing how communities can remain unique while still participating in a broader connected world. The Mongol period also contributes to the exchange of scientific and cultural knowledge across Eurasia. Scholars, craftsmen, and travelers move more frequently between distant regions. Ideas about mathematics, medicine, astronomy, and engineering travel through connected territories, allowing different civilizations to share discoveries and improve their understanding of the world beyond their own borders. One fascinating example is the journey of travelers such as Marco Polo, whose accounts describe experiences in the Mongol world during the 13th century. His writings introduce many Europeans to distant lands and cultures. Historians continue discussing which details came from direct observation and which may have been shaped by storytelling. The rise of nomadic empires changes how settled civilizations respond to the steppe regions. Kingdoms and cities begin creating new approaches to diplomacy, trade, and defense. They slowly recognize that the open grasslands are not isolated spaces but important connections between distant societies and expanding networks of human interaction. The relationship between nomadic and settled societies remains complex throughout history. There are periods of conflict involving territory, resources, and political influence, but there are also times of cooperation and peaceful exchange. The connection between these worlds cannot be described simply. Because history develops through many different experiences, the movement of nomadic empires leaves lasting influences across the Eurasian continent. Languages, traditions, technologies, and cultural practices continue long after political structures change. Even when borders disappear and rulers are forgotten, the connections created through travel, trade, and communication remain part of the shared memory of humanity. As you look across ancient and medieval landscapes, you begin noticing a larger pattern within history. Power does not always belong only to those who build impressive cities or monuments. Sometimes influence comes from those who understand movement, communication, adaptation, and the vast spaces connecting different parts of the world. The Great Steppe becomes a bridge between civilizations rather than simply a barrier separating distant communities. The same open lands that once appeared to divide different peoples gradually help connect them through travel, trade, and cultural exchange. Every journey across the grasslands adds another thread to the wider human story, allowing languages, traditions, and ideas to move quietly between generations. Eventually, even the greatest empires experience transformation and change as time passes. Political systems rise, expand, and eventually fade, but the relationships they create often remain. Roads and trade networks remain as quiet echoes, showing that history grows through movement, cooperation, adaptation, and connections between human societies across time. And as the winds continue traveling across the endless plains, the world slowly moves toward a new stage of human connection. The meeting between nomadic power and settled civilization creates a blending of cultures, where different traditions begin sharing one larger and continuing human story. You now enter a world where the boundaries between civilizations become softer, where roads, rivers, and open landscapes allow different communities to meet. The great empires have created spaces where people from distant regions can encounter one another, carrying languages, traditions, and ideas that slowly become part of a larger human story. Across Eurasia, movement continues to shape the ancient world. Merchants travel with their goods, scholars carry their knowledge, and travelers bring memories from distant homes. The journey is often slow, but every step creates a connection. The world becomes a little smaller each time two unfamiliar cultures meet. You can imagine yourself walking through an ancient marketplace as the sun gently rises above the rooftops. Fabrics hang from wooden frames, small sounds of conversation fill the air, and different languages flow together. It feels almost like a modern airport where everyone is searching for directions, except the signs are replaced by friendly gestures. One of the most important places in this connected world is Samarkand, an ancient city located in Central Asia. For centuries, it becomes a meeting point between East and West. Its location along important trade routes allows merchants, artists, and thinkers to gather in one remarkable place. Samarkand's history stretches back thousands of years, with archaeological evidence showing early settlement long before its later fame. The city becomes a place where Persian, Greek, Chinese, Indian, and Central Asian influences meet. Each generation adds another layer to its identity. When you picture Samarkand, you see more than buildings. You see footsteps crossing courtyards, merchants arranging goods, and travelers resting after long journeys. The city becomes a quiet reflection of the larger world, showing how cultures can mix without losing every part of themselves. The exchange of goods naturally brings the exchange of ideas. Silk, spices, metals, and precious stones travel across continents, but so do stories, inventions, and beliefs. A simple object carried by a traveler may contain knowledge from a distant place that changes another society. One fascinating example is the spread of paper-making technology. Originating in ancient China, the knowledge of paper production gradually travels westward through cultural exchanges. This development later supports education, administration, and the preservation of information across many civilizations. You can imagine an ancient scholar carefully writing on a sheet of paper while sunlight moves across a quiet room. The scene is peaceful and focused, much like someone today writing notes before a long journey. The tools change, but the desire to record thoughts remains familiar. As empires expand, languages also begin to travel further. Traders and officials often learn multiple languages to communicate across different regions. This creates environments where translation and interpretation become important parts of daily life. The ancient world is filled with people who quietly act as bridges between cultures. Translators, merchants, craftsmen, and travelers help ideas move from one place to another. Their contributions are sometimes forgotten, but their influence remains hidden within history. Art also becomes a place where cultures blend. Archaeological discoveries reveal objects that combine different artistic styles, showing how creators borrowed ideas from distant communities. A decorative pattern or image may contain influences from several regions at once. The famous Silk Road is not only a route for expensive goods, it becomes a pathway for creativity. Designs, techniques, and artistic traditions travel along these roads, creating new forms that belong to multiple cultures rather than a single origin. Religion and philosophy also travel through these ancient connections between civilizations. Different beliefs spread along trade routes and meet communities that interpret them in unique ways. These exchanges happen slowly across centuries, like a gentle river shaping the land. Ideas move quietly, blending with local traditions and creating new forms of cultural understanding. The blending of worlds does not happen in a single moment, but develops through countless small interactions. A traveler shares a story, a craftsman discovers a new technique, or a merchant introduces unfamiliar materials. These simple encounters become part of a larger transformation that gradually connects distant societies through experience and exchange. Archaeologists, studying ancient sites, often discover objects that reveal these cultural connections. Coins from distant rulers, pottery with foreign patterns, and tools created with unfamiliar methods show that communities were linked long before modern transportation. These discoveries quietly demonstrate how people exchanged ideas, resources, and creativity across great distances, even within ordinary homes. Cultural exchange appears through daily habits and familiar objects. Food, clothing, decorations, and household traditions change when people encounter new influences. A recipe, a woven pattern, or a simple tool may contain a hidden story of travel, adaptation, and connection between different communities. The growth of interconnected civilizations creates new centers of learning and discovery. Cities become gathering places where scholars study mathematics, medicine, astronomy, and literature. Knowledge travels between cultures, combining earlier discoveries with new observations. Each generation builds upon the wisdom of those who lived before, creating a continuous flow of human understanding. Many achievements of the ancient world emerge from this shared exchange of knowledge. Medical practices, mathematical ideas, and engineering methods often develop through contributions from many societies. Human progress becomes less like one straight road and more like a wide network of paths, where different cultures meet and create something greater together. As you continue through this ancient landscape, you notice that history is not only about rulers, borders, or powerful empires. It is also about ordinary people carrying memories, skills, and traditions with them. Every traveler leaves something behind and takes something new away, allowing cultures to slowly change through countless small encounters across different lands. The great empires rise, expand, and eventually transform, but many cultural connections they create continue for much longer. Languages survive through generations, artistic styles develop into new expressions, and traditions adapt to different environments. The memory of ancient civilizations remains alive through the people who inherit, protect, and reshape their shared cultural experiences. The blending of worlds teaches a quiet lesson about time and human history. Civilization is not only a series of victories, conflicts, or changes in political power. It is also a gradual process of sharing, adapting, and creating something new from many different influences that meet across continents. As the evening settles over the ancient roads, you can imagine the lost travelers arriving at a peaceful city gate. Their journeys may be long, but their stories continue beyond their own lives. The roads remain open, carrying echoes of countless voices across the wide spaces of history and connecting distant generations. These connected worlds inspire transformation as civilizations create administration, infrastructure, and systems to manage expanding territories. These developments quietly shape the future, showing how human societies continue growing through cooperation, planning, and the shared experience of many cultures. You now move into the quieter inner workings of the great empires, where power is not only found on battlefields or distant frontiers. Behind every grand monument and long road, there are countless small systems that keep daily life moving. Empires survive through organization, routine, and the careful balance of many ordinary activities. When you imagine an ancient empire from a distance, you may see rulers, armies, and magnificent structures. Yet behind these visible symbols exists another world of farmers, builders, merchants, scribes, and officials. These ordinary people create the quiet rhythm that keeps large societies operating, allowing civilizations to continue through countless seasons and generations. The machinery of an empire is often surprisingly calm and carefully organized. It depends on records being created, supplies being stored, roads being repaired, and agreements being respected. It resembles a modern home where daily life works smoothly because someone remembers the small tasks, maintains order, and keeps everything prepared. One of the greatest examples of this organization is the Roman Empire. At its height, Rome controls enormous territories across Europe, North Africa, and parts of Asia. Managing such a wide realm requires administration, communication networks, and infrastructure that connect distant provinces and support the daily lives of millions of people. The Romans create an extensive network of roads that allows people, goods, and information to travel efficiently. These roads are built with careful engineering, using layers of materials to create durable surfaces. Many ancient Roman roads influence routes that still exist today, quietly hidden beneath modern pathways. You can imagine a traveler walking along a Roman road, surrounded by fields and distant hills. The journey is slow but steady, with milestones marking the distance ahead. It feels almost like following a peaceful walking trail today, except the signs were carved from stone instead of placed on a wooden post. The Roman system also depends on taxation. Provinces contribute resources that help support the empire's administration and public works. These taxes allow governments to maintain roads, bridges, military structures, and urban services that shape everyday life. Far to the east, the Persian Empire develops its own methods for managing a vast territory. Under the Achaemenid kings, Persia creates provinces called satrapies, where local governors administer regions while remaining connected to the central authority. This system allows different lands and cultures to function together within one large political structure. The Persian royal road becomes one of the remarkable achievements of this administrative system. The route connects important regions across the empire, allowing messages, officials, and goods to travel more efficiently. Ancient travelers experience an impressive level of connection, especially considering the enormous distances and challenges of the landscape. The Greek historian Herodotus describes the Persian messenger system and its remarkable efficiency. Royal couriers travel through organized stations where they can rest and change horses. This network allows important messages to cross great distances quickly, helping Persian rulers maintain communication and stability throughout their extensive empire. Another civilization with strong administrative traditions is ancient China. During the Han Dynasty, the government developed systems for taxation, law, education, and public works. Officials organized society through a structured hierarchy, creating methods that help manage a large population across different regions. The Han Dynasty also expands infrastructure and trade connections throughout its territory. Roads, canals, and administrative centers improve communication between distant areas. These systems allow communities to remain connected despite geographic challenges, supporting economic growth, cultural exchange, and the steady operation of one of ancient China's greatest dynasties. One remarkable achievement from ancient China is the development of the civil service tradition. Government positions increasingly require knowledge and training, creating a model where administration depends on skill and education. This idea continues influencing many societies long after the ancient period. The stability of empires depends greatly on the ability to store and manage resources. Ancient governments maintain granaries, warehouses, and supply networks to prepare for changing conditions. These systems help communities survive difficult periods while supporting growing cities and populations, creating a steady foundation for daily life across large territories. Archaeological discoveries reveal many traces of these organized systems from ancient times. Warehouses, roads, bridges, and official buildings remain as quiet reminders of the effort needed to maintain civilization. The stones and structures appear silent, yet they preserve memories of the workers and planners who carefully created them. Even the greatest structures begin with simple and repeated actions. A bridge exists because workers carefully place one stone after another. A road reaches across distant lands because countless people repair and maintain small sections over many years. Large achievements often grow from patient effort and ordinary tasks. Beneath the movement of armies and political changes, ordinary life continues. Families prepare meals, craftsmen create objects, merchants negotiate exchanges, and children learn skills from older generations. The daily rhythm of human life remains familiar across many centuries. One interesting detail from Roman history is that many ancient cities developed public bath systems. These places are not only used for washing, but also become social spaces where people meet, exchange news, and discuss daily matters. In a quiet way, they function like ancient community centers where conversations flow naturally, much like water moving through the carefully designed channels around them. The organization of empires creates opportunities for cultural growth and intellectual exchange. Roads, bridges, and communication networks allow literature, science, medicine, and artistic ideas to travel between regions. The same systems created for administration also become pathways for creativity, education, and discovery, helping different communities share knowledge across vast territories. As you look at these ancient civilizations, you begin to understand that an empire is not simply a collection of lands controlled by rulers. It is a living structure formed from countless connections between farmers, builders, officials, merchants, and travelers. Each person contributes to the steady movement that keeps society functioning through time. Over many generations, these systems gradually change and sometimes become weaker. No administrative structure remains completely unchanged because environments, economies, and societies continue transforming. Yet many ideas created during these periods survive in different forms, influencing later civilizations through laws, architecture, engineering, and cultural traditions. The roads, bridges, and buildings remain as silent witnesses to the ages that pass. They stand beneath the same sky and experience the same seasons that once watched ancient workers construct them. Their continued existence reminds you that human effort can last far beyond the lives of the people who originally created these remarkable structures, and as the great empires continue their long journey through history, their systems slowly begin facing new pressures and changes. The next stage follows the gentle transformation of civilizations, where even the strongest structures gradually adapt, weaken, and return to the endless natural rhythm of historical change. You now enter a quieter part of the journey, where great empires slowly begin changing their shape through time. The end of an empire rarely arrives as one sudden event. Instead, it often unfolds gradually, like evening light fading across the horizon. History moves gently, with civilizations transforming through many small changes rather than one dramatic moment. The greatest civilizations in history experience many cycles of growth, adaptation, and adjustment before decline begins. Their roads, cities, traditions, and systems continue for generations even when new pressures appear. The movement of history is not a straight path but resembles a river that slowly changes direction while continuing its endless journey through the landscape. When you imagine an ancient city during its later years, you do not see only empty streets and forgotten buildings. You see merchants still exchanging goods, families preparing meals, and workers continuing familiar routines. The city may be changing, yet human life continues quietly beneath the surface. Following rhythms that have existed for centuries, empires often face pressures from many different sources over long periods of time. Climate changes, economic difficulties, political struggles, and shifting trade routes can slowly influence where power gathers. These forces do not always appear suddenly, but work gradually. Like wind shaping mountains and valleys through countless seasons, the Roman Empire provides one famous example of gradual transformation across history. Instead of disappearing immediately, the western part experiences centuries of change and adjustment. Political authority becomes weaker, some regions gain independence, and new societies slowly emerge from Roman foundations while preserving parts of the earlier world. The transition after the Western Roman Empire remains complex and layered. Many Roman traditions continue through different forms, including laws, languages, architecture, and administrative ideas. The old world does not simply vanish completely. Instead, it rearranges itself, allowing new cultures to grow from the remains of earlier civilizations. You can imagine an old Roman road stretching quietly across the countryside while new travelers walk along its surface. The road does not recognize changing rulers or different empires above it. It continues its purpose of connecting places and people, carrying footsteps forward through centuries of human movement. Environmental changes also influence ancient societies in many regions. Shifts in rainfall, temperature, and natural conditions affect agriculture and settlement patterns. When resources become harder to reach, communities often adjust by changing locations, developing new methods, or finding different ways to maintain their connection with the land. The decline of some ancient cities connects closely with changing trade networks. A city once positioned at the center of important routes may gradually lose influence when travelers choose different paths. Economic importance can move quietly, almost like a river changing its course after many years of slow transformation. One fascinating example is the ancient city of Palmyra, located in present-day Syria. For many centuries, it grows as an important trading center connecting different regions. Its position between major civilizations allows merchants to exchange goods, ideas, and traditions. The city becomes a quiet meeting place where cultures from distant lands interact and influence each other. Palmyra's story shows how quickly the importance of a place can change through history. When political conditions shift and trade routes move, the city's role gradually transforms. Yet its ruins remain today, preserving memories of a time when travelers, merchants, and communities from different backgrounds shared the same streets. Many ancient cities eventually become covered by layers of soil and passing time. Buildings collapse, plants grow, and landscapes slowly absorb human creations. Nature does not completely erase the traces of civilization. Instead, it gently hides them until future generations discover these forgotten places and listen again to their quiet, historical stories. Archaeologists often uncover these hidden settlements and carefully rebuild their histories. A broken wall, a piece of pottery, or an ancient road can reveal details about people who lived thousands of years ago. Small objects may appear ordinary, yet they preserve valuable information about daily life, traditions, and the experiences of past communities. The decline of an empire does not mean the end of human creativity and imagination. New cultures rise from older foundations, carrying pieces of previous civilizations forward. Languages change, traditions develop, and communities continue creating new futures. History transforms rather than disappears, allowing the past to remain connected with the present. History often works like a forest growing on ancient ground. Old trees fall, but their remains provide nutrients for new life. In the same way, older civilizations leave behind knowledge, structures, and ideas that later societies adapt. Every generation receives something from the past and reshapes it in its own way. The Byzantine Empire, continuing from the Eastern Roman world, preserves many Roman traditions for centuries after the Western Empire changes. Its cities, laws, and scholarship demonstrate how a civilization can transform while still carrying memories of earlier times. The empire becomes a bridge between ancient traditions and later historical developments. Across Eurasia, both nomadic and settled societies experience repeated cycles of expansion and transformation. Groups that once hold great influence may become smaller, while new powers emerge from different regions. These changes happen gradually, showing that history is always moving through cycles of growth, adaptation, and renewal. One interesting detail about ancient ruins is that abandoned places sometimes become useful to later communities. People reuse old stones, roads, and buildings because practical materials remain valuable. In a simple way, the past continues serving the present, showing how human history often layers itself rather than replacing everything completely. As you travel through these changing landscapes, you begin to understand that decline is not only about disappearance or loss, it is also a process of transition. Every ending creates space for another beginning. Even when the transformation happens quietly and almost invisibly across generations, the remains of old empires become bridges between different ages of humanity. A forgotten temple, an ancient road, or a damaged city wall connects the present with distant memories. These places remind you that human stories continue beyond rulers, borders, and political systems that once appeared permanent. The great civilizations of the past eventually become part of the earth itself. Their monuments remain beneath the same endless sky, and their ancient stones continue receiving sunlight that once touched the hands of builders. Time gently carries everything forward, blending human achievements, forgotten memories, and the quiet movements of nature through countless generations. From these peaceful ruins, new cultures slowly emerge across the landscape. Like grass growing through cracks in an old stone path, new societies rise from earlier worlds. They inherit traditions, knowledge, and memories from those who came before them, carrying fragments of history into the future while continuing humanity's endless journey of adaptation and creation. You now continue along the quiet river of human history, where civilizations transform and people learn to adjust to new surroundings. The rise and fall of empires may change borders and rulers, but the deeper parts of human life often continue. Memories, traditions, and shared knowledge move gently from one generation to another. Across the world, communities discover ways to live within changing circumstances. They rebuild homes, create new relationships, and preserve pieces of their past while welcoming new influences. Adaptation becomes a quiet skill that allows humanity to continue through centuries of transformation. When you imagine a village or city after a great historical change, you do not see only what has disappeared. You see people planting crops, preparing meals, telling stories, and teaching children. Life continues in familiar ways, almost like a garden that grows again after a long season. The ability to adapt is one of the oldest qualities of human societies. People carry memories of earlier times while creating new solutions for new challenges. They do not simply leave the past behind, they reshape it into something that fits the present moment. Anthropologists studying cultures around the world often discover that ancient customs survive in unexpected forms. A traditional celebration, a style of craftsmanship, or a method of preparing food may continue for centuries. Even after the original society that created it has changed, these traditions are like small streams flowing from an ancient river. They may change direction, become smaller, or merge with other streams, but the water continues moving. The original source remains connected to the present through countless quiet transformations. Migration plays a major role in this process. Throughout history, people move because of trade, climate, opportunity, or changing political conditions. Every journey carries ideas, languages, and habits from one place to another. You can imagine a traveler arriving in a distant town with only a few belongings. Along the way, that person shares stories, learns new customs, and becomes part of a different community. The meeting between unfamiliar worlds creates something new, often without anyone noticing the change immediately. Ancient migration routes continue to influence modern societies. The same regions that once connected empires now contain communities shaped by many different historical movements. The footprints of old travelers remain hidden beneath modern streets and landscapes. The blending of cultures does not mean that every tradition disappears. Instead, many practices combine and evolve. A musical style may include different influences. A language may contain borrowed words, and an everyday habit may carry memories from several places. One interesting example is the way languages develop over time. Many modern languages contain words that traveled through ancient trade routes and cultural exchanges. A single word can reveal a long journey across continents, carried by merchants, scholars, and travelers. You can think of language as a living map. Each word represents a place, a meeting, or a moment when different people interacted. Speaking a language today often means unknowingly carrying small pieces of many historical journeys. The same process appears in architecture and art. Buildings often combine styles from different periods and regions. A design element created in one civilization may later appear thousands of miles away in a completely different cultural setting. Cities especially show this endless adaptation. Many urban centers grow layer by layer, with ancient foundations beneath newer streets. A person walking through a modern city may unknowingly pass above centuries of human stories. The ancient city of Istanbul provides a remarkable example of layered history and cultural transformation. Located between Europe and Asia, the city has been shaped by many civilizations across centuries. Its streets, buildings, and traditions preserve memories from different eras, allowing ancient influences and modern life to exist together. Every corner reflects the movement of people, ideas, and cultures that have passed through this unique place. The movement of people creates new communities as travelers and settlers arrive in unfamiliar regions. Over many generations, these groups gradually build connections with local populations through shared experiences. Languages, customs, traditions, and daily habits begin blending together. Identities become more complex because people carry pieces of their original homes while adapting to new environments. Human societies grow through this quiet process of exchange and understanding. History shows that human societies are rarely completely separated from one another. Even distant communities often share hidden connections created through migration, trade, and cultural exchange. A simple object, a story, or an idea can travel across enormous distances and influence people who never meet directly. The world has always been connected through invisible networks formed by movement, curiosity, and the shared experiences of humanity. The adaptation of humanity is not only about survival, but also about creativity and imagination. People transform challenges into new ideas by combining older knowledge with fresh discoveries. This process allows civilizations to continue growing even after experiencing difficult changes. Every generation adds something new while preserving parts of the past, creating a continuous flow of innovation, memory, and cultural development throughout human history. You can imagine history as a slow river flowing across a vast landscape. Some parts of the river move quickly, while others remain calm and quiet beneath the open sky. Yet the entire river continues forward, carrying everything it gathers along the way. In the same manner, civilizations collect experiences, traditions, and knowledge before passing them onward to future generations. The great empires of the past may no longer exist as political structures, but their influences remain deeply connected to the modern world. Roads, languages, traditions, and ideas continue shaping everyday life. The echoes of ancient civilizations can still be found in architecture, customs, and cultural practices. Their stories continue quietly, even after their rulers and borders have disappeared with time. As you rest and follow this endless flow of time, you begin to notice that history is not only about what disappears, it is also about what survives through transformation. Human creativity allows the past and present to exist together, creating new meanings from old memories. Every civilization leaves behind traces that continue influencing the world in gentle and unexpected ways. The journey across ancient landscapes reveals a gentle truth about humanity. Every generation receives knowledge from the past and leaves something for the future. Human stories continue through adaptation, memory, and transformation. Civilizations may change, but the desire to create, connect, and understand remains alive across countless ages. And as the river of history moves onward, it carries humanity toward a larger understanding of time itself. Empires, cities, and civilizations become small moments within a greater landscape. The earth continues its patient journey beyond human lifetimes, while mountains, rivers, and skies remain as silent witnesses. Everything changes slowly, yet existence continues its endless flow. You now move beyond the borders of kingdoms and empires, beyond the names of rulers and the lines drawn on ancient maps. The great civilizations that once stretched across continents have become quiet traces, resting in the memory of the earth. Their stories remain, but they now exist within the much larger rhythm of time. The world you see around you is older than every empire ever created. Mountains rise slowly, rivers continue their journeys, and the sky changes with the same gentle movement that existed before humans recorded their first stories. Nature does not hurry, and it does not measure history in the same way people do. When you imagine standing on an ancient plain, you notice how little has changed in the landscape itself. The wind still moves through the grass, the clouds still travel above the horizon, and the rivers still search for their paths. The earth continues its quiet work without needing attention. Human civilizations appear magnificent when viewed from within their own time. A city filled with towers, markets, and monuments feels endless to those who live there. Yet from the perspective of geological time, even the greatest empire is only a brief moment, like a single note within a much longer song. The concept of geological time helps you understand this scale. The earth has existed for billions of years, long before the first villages appeared. Mountains have formed and changed, oceans have moved, and landscapes have transformed through processes that unfold over enormous periods. A human lifetime feels long when measured by personal experiences, but it is incredibly small compared with the age of the planet. A dynasty may last several centuries, yet the stones beneath it may have existed for millions of years before anyone built upon them. The ancient empires of Eurasia, Rome, Persia, China, and many others once shaped vast territories. Their rulers created laws, roads, and monuments that seem permanent. Yet time slowly softened their boundaries, and their power became part of the archaeological record. You can imagine an ancient map resting quietly in a museum today. The borders drawn by forgotten rulers remain as faded lines, showing where power once moved. The map does not show the footsteps of ordinary people who lived within those borders, but their lives are still part of the story. The remains of old civilizations are often discovered beneath deep layers of soil and time. Archaeologists uncover walls, tools, pottery, and inscriptions that reveal quiet moments from distant ages. These discoveries remind you that the past does not completely disappear. Instead, it becomes silent and hidden, waiting patiently beneath the earth until future generations return to explore its forgotten stories. Some ancient cities that once seemed powerful and unstoppable are now peaceful ruins beneath the open sky. Their empty streets receive sunlight, rain, and the gentle movement of seasons. Nature slowly returns to places shaped by human hands, creating a quiet balance between human creations and the earth's natural processes. The ruins remain as peaceful reminders of changing civilizations, One remarkable example is the ancient city of Petra, carved into the rocky landscapes of the Middle East. It once flourished as a center of trade, architecture, and engineering. Over time, its importance declined as routes changed and societies transformed. Yet its stone structures remain today, quietly showing the creativity, knowledge, and dedication of the people who built them. The mountains surrounding ancient places often survive longer than the civilizations built below them. They witness countless generations arriving, creating communities, and eventually leaving. A mountain does not know the name of an empire or the language of a ruler, yet it silently observes every transformation across the landscape. Its presence reminds you that nature moves through a much longer rhythm. Rivers also carry memories across the passage of time and connect the present with distant history. The Nile continues flowing beside the lands where ancient Egypt developed. The Tigris and Euphrates still move through regions where early cities appeared. These rivers quietly link modern communities with ancient farmers, builders, and travelers who once depended on their steady waters. The sky above these ancient places remains one of the most constant elements of existence. The same stars that guided early travelers continue shining above the earth today. Their light crosses enormous distances beyond human experience. Looking upward, you sense the universe's vastness and humanity's place within a greater cosmic story. An interesting detail from astronomy is that many stars visible today existed long before human civilization began. While empires rise, expand, and disappear across history, these distant stars continue following their own natural rhythms. The universe creates a peaceful contrast with human activity, reminding you that our greatest achievements remain small moments within the endless movement of time. The achievements of ancient societies still deserve appreciation and thoughtful reflection. Their architecture, mathematics, agriculture, medicine, and philosophy continue influencing the modern world. However, their greatest lesson may be the understanding that everything eventually changes. Even structures and ideas that appear permanent will transform as generations pass, and new cultures create different paths forward. The rise of an empire is never the final destination of history. It is only one stage within a much larger cycle of growth, transformation, and renewal. Communities form, develop, adapt, and eventually become part of the foundation for something new. The movement of civilization continues like a river flowing through countless landscapes and generations. You can think of civilization as a vast forest growing through time. Trees rise, provide shelter, and eventually return to the soil where new life begins. In the same way, older societies leave behind knowledge, traditions, and discoveries that continue supporting future generations. Every civilization becomes part of a larger natural cycle of creation, change, and renewal. The movement of power across history resembles waves on a vast ocean. Some waves rise high and become visible from far away, while others remain gentle and unnoticed. Eventually, every wave returns to the larger body of water from which it came. As you continue this quiet journey, you begin to see that history is not only about human achievements. It is also about the relationship between people and the natural world. The earth provides the setting, while humanity creates temporary patterns upon it. The ancient empires are now absorbed into the landscape, where their roads become pathways, their buildings become ruins, and their stories become distant memories. Yet the rivers and mountains continue their timeless existence, carrying the flow of history forward. Everything created by humans eventually returns to nature's greater rhythm, where voices fade and only the connection between earth, sky, and time remains. The journey continues beyond every civilization and lifetime. You have now reached the quietest shore of this long journey, where the stories of ancient lands slowly settle into the silence of time. The rise of tribes, the creation of cities, and the movement of great empires become gentle memories carried by the endless flow of history. Everything returns to the calm rhythm of the earth, leaving behind lessons, connections, and traces for future generations. The ancient world is filled with countless moments that once felt important to the people who lived them. A ruler's decision, a merchant's journey, or a farmer's harvest could shape the lives of many. Yet over the immense scale of time, these moments become quiet echoes within a much larger movement. You can imagine yourself sitting beneath an open sky at the end of the day. The wind moves softly across the grass, and the distant sounds of nature replace the voices of ancient cities. It feels peaceful, like a place where the world has finally stopped rushing and simply rests. The great empires of the past were like waves upon a vast ocean. Some waves rose higher than others, reaching distant shores and changing the landscape around them. But every wave eventually returned to the water, becoming part of the same endless ocean. The Roman roads, the Persian pathways, the Mongolian routes, and the ancient river civilizations all leave their marks. They create connections that continue beyond their political existence. Even when borders disappear, the influence of human movement remains quietly woven into the world. You remember the open lands where everything began, the wide spaces shaped by wind and sky. Those landscapes taught early communities how to adapt and move. The grasslands did not command people with words, but they guided them through seasons, resources, and natural patterns. You remember the rivers that carried the first organized civilizations. The Nile, Tigris, and Euphrates provided more than water. They created a rhythm that guided human life. Their steady cycles helped communities develop farming, cooperation, and social structures. Around these rivers, people learned how nature and human effort could work together to build lasting foundations. You remember the ancient roads where different worlds met through movement and exchange. Traders, travelers, and scholars crossed enormous distances carrying goods, stories, and ideas. The ancient world was never completely separated because curiosity encouraged people to explore beyond familiar lands. Every journey created new connections between communities and helped shape a wider shared human experience. The blending of cultures remains one of history's quiet wonders. Languages, traditions, art, and knowledge traveled from one region to another, changing gradually like stones shaped by flowing water. No civilization created the world alone. Each society contributed something unique, and every generation added new layers to the larger story of human creativity and connection. Anthropologists often discover that many ancient traditions survive in surprising ways. Old customs may continue through modern celebrations. Familiar patterns may appear in contemporary designs, and ancient knowledge may remain hidden inside everyday practices. These connections show that the past does not disappear completely. Instead, it transforms and continues influencing the lives of future generations. You can think of humanity as a long conversation extending across centuries. People from the distant past speak through artifacts, buildings, and stories preserved through time. People today listen, interpret, and add their own experiences to this ongoing dialogue. The conversation never fully ends because every generation continues contributing to the shared journey of human history. The earth itself becomes the final storyteller of forgotten civilizations. Mountains rise and slowly wear away, rivers change their courses, and forests grow across abandoned places. Nature does not completely remove the past. Instead, it transforms human creations into quieter parts of the landscape. Every layer of soil and every natural movement preserves traces of ancient lives, allowing history to continue through time. One small stone from an ancient road can hold memories of thousands of footsteps that once crossed the land. A piece of pottery can preserve the touch of the hands that shaped it. Even a simple object may carry the presence of someone who lived many generations before. These forgotten items quietly connect the present with distant human experiences and stories. The passage of time teaches a gentle lesson about what truly matters. Human creations may eventually disappear, but the actions behind them continue influencing the future. Cooperation, creativity, and adaptation survive through generations, even when the names of individuals are lost. The greatest achievements of humanity often remain through shared knowledge rather than through monuments or powerful rulers. The ancient empires once appeared enormous, stretching across continents and shaping the lives of millions of people. Today, they mainly exist through books, museums, ruins, and the imagination of those who explore history. Their political power has faded, yet their influence remains through languages, traditions, ideas, and structures that continue quietly within modern societies. As the night deepens, the world becomes peaceful and still. The same stars that watched ancient travelers now shine above you. The same winds that crossed forgotten plains continue their endless journey, carrying no judgment or memory of conflict. They simply follow nature's rhythm, reminding every generation that time moves beyond human achievements and ambitions. The stories of civilization slowly become part of a larger silence. The conflicts, dreams, ambitions, and accomplishments of the past dissolve into the wider movement of time. Every empire, city, and individual becomes one small piece of a much greater existence. History remains not only through events, but also through the quiet connections between humanity and the universe. You can now allow the journey to become softer and calmer. There is no need to remember every detail because history continues naturally without effort. Rivers continue flowing, mountains continue standing, and the earth continues moving through the vast universe. The story of humanity remains a small but meaningful part of the endless movement of existence itself. The world has always been changing, and it will continue changing. Yet beneath all transformations, there is a quiet connection between generations. Every life touches another life, every culture influences another culture, and every moment becomes part of a larger flow. The ancient landscapes remain peaceful beneath the night sky. The grass moves gently, the rivers whisper softly, and the distant horizon rests in complete stillness. The long story of empires has reached its final reflection, returning to the calm place where all journeys begin. And now, as the last echoes fade into the quiet darkness, you feel the slow rhythm of the world continuing beyond time. The earth breathes, the stars remain above, and every ancient memory gently settles into the endless flow of existence. The script comes to a close. Thank you all for listening.